Well, now that we have the 3 handhelds behind us, it is time to go back to 32-bit territory. So up next in the marathon, we're going to be taking a look at Megaman X5. Intended to be the last game in the Megaman X series, and to me, this is the darkest chapter in the Megaman X saga. Granted, I did say from the beginning that X as a whole is a darker Megaman series, but X5 is, in my opinion, the darkest of them all. Now, will the gameplay of X5 improve upon X4? Yes and no. Somewhat. Here is my review of Megaman X5. In all honesty, this game is somewhat tricky to review, and that's due to 2 things. The gameplay engine is to some extent a retooled X4 engine, but with some changes that either benefit a character, be unnecessary, or just straight up suck. Next is how the story plays out. Instead of full motion video that you can skip, the whole game is relegated to still images and long dialogue that can't be skipped. In addition, returning from X3 is the multiple endings, and no matter what you did, some scenes can shift differently when you least expect it. Now this review can be somewhat convoluted, so hopefully you all just bear with me as I'll try to summarize everything the best I can.
Earth is once again at a peaceful state several months after the Repliforce War. The repair of the space colonies damaged during the war are of near completion, the only space colony remaining being the giant colony Eurasia, which was planned to receive extensive renovation due to its old design. Following X4, the Hunter's unseen commander stepped down out of guild after the Repliforce War, and the Maverick Hunters have new recruits joining the team. The Navigator Aelia, the Mechanic Douglas, the Medic Lifesaver, and new Commander Cygnus. No, not Sigma, so don't confuse the 2 names together. A week has passed, and someone had occupied Eurasia and took control of it, scattering a virus in the colony and using its artificial gravity systems to set it on a collision course towards Earth. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Sigma, coming back from the junk heap again, attacks a city, forcing X and Zero into fighting him. Sigma attacks the Hunters directly, intending to lose on purpose. When he does, he spreads a Maverick virus across the Earth, throwing it into a state of widespread panic. Within 16 hours, Eurasia will crash and cause great destruction, in the worst case extinguishing all life on the planet. The Maverick Hunters plan on using the large particle cannon called Enigma to destroy Eurasia before it happens. The Enigma cannon is somewhat old and needs to be upgraded, so it's X and Zero's race against time to stop it before it's too late. Like in X4, you can select which hunter to start with, only this time, you can still choose between the 2 characters later inside the game as they share the same plot, a staple of the series starting with this game. The only difference is that depending which hunter you start with, the other will be affected negatively after Sigma's defeat in the opening stage. New to the game is a trading simulator, where you learn the mechanics of the game. Such examples will be the hunter's ability to duck down, climbing ropes, which look more like poles, and Zero's ability to use his Z-Buster, but unlike X3, the Z-Buster is very limited in its use as Zero needs to charge the weapon and has to be on the ground, and the strength of the blast is only as strong as a level 2 charge shot, rendering it useless. which is why in the opening stage, I'd rather start off as X, as his X4 armor is useful, but unfortunately is sadly nerfed. He can't perform Nova Strike with it, and his helmet no longer gives him
infinite ammo.
But at least it's better than this game's Z-Buster. Perhaps a negative move was that Buster shots can no longer pass through walls, not even charge shots, which was a good defensive tactic in past games. But why they nerfed it, I'll never know. You start off with 8 Mavericks, and the story diverges depending on what you do and the time it takes to keep the situation under control. Though personally, I just follow Alia's advice and just stick with the recommended Mavericks if I wanted to achieve the true ending. Due to the situation presented in the plot, the game has a countdown to 16 hours until the space colony Eurasia crashes into Earth, and each stage venture spends 1 hour, and it doesn't matter if you're actually going through the stage at all, or just backtracking for missed items. To prevent the crash, the player must collect 4 essential parts for one of 2 options. Intercept the colony by using Enigma Cannon, or kamikaze into it with a space shuttle. One half of the Mavericks possess the pieces for the Enigma, while the other for the shuttle. There is a chance that either plan may fail, which can change the ending and boss battles, providing a non-linear progression throughout the game. Also, you gotta love the names of these 8 Mavericks, as some staff members from Capcom must really like both Guns N' Roses and the Hanoi Rocks. You know what? Let's make a rundown of them. Grizzly Slash is obviously Saul/Hudson, but you also have Duff McKagan, Steven Adler, Izzy Stradlin, Dizzy Reed, Matt Sorum, Hanoi Rocks frontman High in the Sky Michael Monroe, and of course, GNR's frontman Axl Rose. And Axl the Red, both himself and the stage, are very interesting. I mean, the rose on Axl's head is red, there are cannons and roses on the background, signifying the band's namesake, and the stage is called Into the Jungle, a reference to the song Welcome to the Jungle, one of the band's magnum opus. Or the boss match with Skyver, catering to Michael Monroe's High in the Sky moniker. I mean, really, the company must have had fun naming these Mavericks just solely on their love for music bands. But then the names in Mega Man are based off music genres, so that's something to consider. However, I neglect to mention that the Japanese names of Mavericks are way different from the English versions. As an example, that Axl the Red's other name is Spike Rose Red. And almost every game would have different Maverick names, with Split Mushroom being one of the rarest that's still named the same. Like X4, there are plenty of gimmicks and obstacles to go through, and many of them you have to be fast on your feet and mind if you want to survive and catch secrets before you miss them. For instance, you need to destroy the cores of supply trucks and get away before the timer goes to 0 in Grizzly Slash, run away from a virus-controlled submarine while also avoid getting crushed by the stage itself in Duff McWhalen, hitting keys to unlock doors in Squid Adler, or finding cover from lava in Matrix Act 1, and controlling the Raiden inside lava in Matrix Act 2, just to name a few. And Matrix Act 2 is the only instance you'll ever have a right armor in this game. After defeating your first Maverick, the mysterious mercenary from the opening scene shows himself to the hunters, revealing his name to be Dynamo, who was hired by Sigma to cause the attack on Eurasia, and he wishes to challenge the hunters into a duel, which you are forced to do after defeating your second Maverick, though he runs away after his defeat. Aside from the X4 armor, there are now 2 new armors in the game. However, unlike the games from past reviews, you get armors as entire sets rather than equipping them in pieces. Each suit of armor has specific properties and drawbacks as a whole, similar to the Rush suit adapters in the original series. These armor parts are very well hidden, and they take either a specific armor to reach them, be creative with your special weapons, or take some items that look suspicious enough that make you want to grab them. Take, for example, Squid Adler. You start off with a hoverbike section, and as you speed through, you'll see glowing blue orbs that you need to grab, and by having all of them will you be able to access a Dr. Light capsule, which by the way is in this game that both Light and Zero start conversing with one another, although timeline-wise, Extreme 2 is when they first met. Also, I gotta mention some of the game's inconsistencies. When you start the game off as X, Zero will lose the use of his Z-Buster, yet in Squid Adler's stage, he fires blue orbs with it. But we'll see a similar inconsistency later in the game. Other tricky capsules will be in Dark Dizzy Act 2, where you need to guide Izzy Glow's weapon carefully to hit the bomb in order to access it. Or inside the sunken ship in Duff McWhalen, where you have to move slightly without straying too far in order to aim Duff's weapon precisely. The first of these new armors is the Falcon armor, which gives X the spear charge shot, which can pass through walls, and the foot parts enable X to execute free move, that allows him to stay airborne for a limited period of time, in which X gains invisibility against collision damage, allowing him to fly through enemies without taking damage, and can also reach places where normal jumps are unreachable. The drawback is that enemy attacks and projectiles can still damage him even in that state. As X flies, a barrier is generated around him, damaging any enemies on contact. Also, the foot parts in the game sacrifices the air dash for the flight function. The second is the Gaia armor, which, while it disables any use of special weapons, X gains the charged Gaia shot, which is a very powerful shot despite its limited range. It can also destroy Gaia cubes, which are the black colored blocks that have the V sign on them. X also gains shot eraser capabilities, which neutralizes any enemy projectile shots with a charge shot, as well as the virus buster that can neutralize any viruses throughout the game. The Gaia armor allows X to stand on spikes without receiving any damage and can cling to walls without slipping, which is very useful against a really tricky boss later in the game. X can also move Gaia cubes by dashing straight at them. However, X's movement and dash speed are greatly decreased, limiting his mobility. In addition, X cannot air dash with this armor equipped. My advice with the armor is to turn on the auto charge in the options menu, as it'll help you in the long run. After defeating a stage, your stats will be shown, and the rank you get depends on how fast you win or how much damage you took. Aelia will also ask what part you want to make out of a Maverick's core, whether to increase HP or increase weapon energy, and you would also create what's called special parts that you can equip on your hunter. Keep in mind that you can only equip a certain number of special parts at a time, although the Gaia armor can't do so, and you get these parts at random. They can range from a higher jump to destroying floating viruses. In some stages, you'll see viruses shaped to look like Sigma, and then later on to look like Zero. And you'll see a virus indicator on the lower left part of the screen. You'll want to try to avoid them as much as you can as X, because being infected enough times will cause X to lose HP. Zero, by contrast, benefits him, as not only getting the virus status not only restores HP, but also invincibility during that duration, and we'll see a plot point of it eventually. You still have hard tanks in the game, but due to the new armors, X has more of an advantage than Zero does, making character balancing impossible because the one who gets the hard tank is the only one being affected. Also, some stages has Reploids that you can rescue, and they both heal you and give you a 1-up. After defeating the first 4 recommended Mavericks, the Enigma is fired and can either succeed in destroying the space colony, or fail and only destroy part of it. Usually it's the latter that happens. If the Enigma fails, only part of Eurasia is destroyed, slightly changing its orbit and delaying the crash. Cygnus begins his next plan, launching a space shuttle which is infected by the virus and the autopilot doesn't work, directly at the colony to destroy it. Again, 4 pieces must be collected to enhance it from the last 4 Mavericks. However, as they defeated the 6th Maverick, Dynamo shows up again, only much harder than the last fight, especially with the shockwave move he performs. He runs away again in defeat, and after defeating your 8th Maverick, the shuttle will launch with Zero as its pilot, as Zero mentions that he's the only competent pilot left. If the shuttle succeeds, 86% of Eurasia is destroyed and Earth is no longer in danger. Zero contacts the hunters from his escape pod to tell them that he's alright and he'll be landing soon. After Zero lands, the hunters come to pick him up. The next day, as the hunters recover, Zero begins to wonder why he was the only one not affected by the virus, which cuts to Lifesaver telling Cygnus of his examination of Zero, with Cygnus stating to just keep an eye on him but don't do anything harsh that might jeopardize the whole mission. In any scenario, Eurasia, either complete or only its remains, falls into Earth and the colony virus merges with the Sigma virus, creating a new virus in the location of the collision. Aelia detected the strange energy of the virus and dubbed it the Zero virus due to its similarities with Zero, and as I mentioned, Zero can also absorb it as if it were the Sigma virus. The hunters go into Eurasia's remains to verify the virus itself. The remains of Eurasia, known as Zero Space, houses some throwbacks from past Megaman games. In Zero Space Act 1, there are one-hit kill lasers, which is a nod to Quickman stage, and its boss match is the Shadow Devil, a throwback to the Yellow Devil from Megaman 1 and 3, only much harder than before, and it also has its boss theme music from Megaman 1. In Zero Space Act 2, the Gaia armor is your friend, and while you can't air dash, you can still use dash jumping to get through, and you can step on spikes, which is useful against the Rangda Bangda Kai, an updated version of the original from X1, and it also has its original boss theme. Having the Gaia armor is essential, especially when by the time it's on low HP, it'll close the walls on you while also have retracting spikes coming off the walls as well. As with X4, you can enter cheat codes to gain access to X's ultimate armor or Zero's black armor, but in Zero Space Act 3, you can find a hidden light capsule containing them. However, only one can enter depending on who it is you're controlling, and there's a stipulation to do so, as well as a very useful trick to get both of them, which I will show you here. I decided to start off as X first, and he has to be a normal form for it to work, or else the capsule won't be present. Once you got the armor, keep exhausting all of your lives until you get a game over, continue the game, and this time choose Zero and do the same thing. Only in Zero's case, he automatically dons the black armor, and it enhances his statistics this time around rather than just having the armor be cosmetic. The boss fight depends on who enters the door. If the player is using X, he will confront Zero about the latter's rise in power and plead with Zero to go back to the Hunter base to get a checkup, which Zero stubbornly denies, and the match between them starts. If you're playing as Zero, he will confront X and two lifesavers and will be labeled as a Maverick by the lifesavers due to Zero's immunity to the viruses, and the match between X and Zero starts. Also, you gotta admit, the X vs Zero theme from X2 remixed into this game is probably the most epic music you'll ever hear in any video game. Either way, both X and Zero fight in a room where Dr. Wily's mark is displayed prominently in the background, and just as the fight is ending, both use Soul Body and Twin Dream on each other, ending in a stalemate. They lie exhausted on the ground, and Sigma appears out of nowhere intending to finish X off. Zero jumps in front of X's body and protects him from Sigma, claiming to know everything Sigma is trying to do, and fires his Z-Buster, ensuring one of two true endings in the game. Now, if you failed on both the Enigma and the Shuttle, or if you purposefully let the collision hours slip, Zero will be awakened as a Maverick with higher stats, forcing X to fight him, which later on, Zero would come to his senses and takes a bullet from Sigma, disabling him from the remainder of the game, ensuring the bad ending. Sigma concedes defeat for now and vanishes for the moment, saying that he will be waiting. The Hunters then prepare for the final battle against Sigma, but not before rematches with the 8 Mavericks again. Once in the final chamber, Sigma reveals that his entire plan hinged on awakening Zero from his false self, and giving him his true power by infecting him with a massive amount of the Sigma virus, scattering it around the Earth in order to force the Maverick out of Zero. But as the amount was not enough to awaken him, he used the colony as the virus and let it land on the Earth. Sigma tells X of an old man he met with a seemingly undying hatred for X. But if the player is Zero, Sigma tells him of the same man who supposedly know enough about Zero to be his own father, which at this point, Sigma is reverencing Dr. Wily. The Hunters fight Sigma in his first form, who loses and reveals his final body, a huge unfinished battle body where the red forehead jewel is his weak spot. X and Zero fight Sigma's last body and defeat him, but Sigma has one last trick up his sleeve. He sealed all the exits in self-destructs, attempting to take both of them with him. After the explosion, Zero's body lies shattered on the ground, with his lower torso and left arm apparently destroyed in the blast. X kneels down to pick up Zero's broken body and pleads with him not to die, not noticing Sigma's severed head charging a blast behind him. Sigma fires an energy blast at X, catching both him and Zero in the chest and creating a hole there. This blast seemingly jars Zero from death as he smiles and blasts Sigma's head with his Z-Buster, finishing him for good. He lies on the ground and calls for X, noting that his friend's optimism at the thought of Zero living is what led to his death. In Zero's ending, he reflects on his life as a vision of him in his original body fighting the original Sigma comes up, retelling the incident that happened prior to X1. He assumes that these visions are due to his power source running out and his memory unit malfunctioning, as another vision, this time of a blurred Dr. Wily, comes into view. Although Dr. Wily is still blurry to him, Zero now realizes that he was made to be a weapon of mass destruction. But then a faded image of Iris then flashes through his mind, with Zero apologizing to her. Zero then makes a remark that it would be better for him to die for real and tells X farewell and passes away to ensure that he would never be used again. X, however, is on the verge of permanent shutdown after Sigma's attack, as he's missing his lower torso and both arms after the explosion. A mysterious glowing figure, obviously being Dr. Light, appears and tells X to rest and relax. X is then repaired and returns to the Maverick Hunter base. If he managed to achieve the true ending, a scene 3 weeks after the final battle with Sigma is shown. Alia alerts the Maverick Hunters of a large Maverick rampaging, and X tells 3 new hunters nearby to move out. The final scene shows X holding Zero's saber, while one of the other hunters remarks that X's eyes have changed and sharpened, more and more reflecting his former partner and friend Zero. X then says that as long as he has Zero's saber, he can fight any enemy head-on, ending Megaman X5. Although this ending would also lead to the start of Megaman X6. Initially, this true ending is supposed to have happened 3 years later instead of 3 weeks, because Megaman X5 was intended to be the last of the X series, and Zero himself would not be revived until a much later series, Megaman Zero. But against Keiji Inafune's wishes, Capcom greenlighted Megaman X6 to continue the series, causing Inafune to reluctantly let his team handle the next game without him, while Inafune then has to change plans on how to end the X series differently.
Although I don't like some of the changes they did to the gameplay, I'm just glad that Megaman X5 is just as fast-paced as Megaman X4. Plus, I do get a kick out of the armors that you can get, the parts that you can equip, the really dark story, and of course, the funny names that they give to the 8 Mavericks. I appreciate Megaman X5 of what they try to do. Also, given the number of the game, X5 is my number 5 Mega Man X game. So in conclusion, I'm going to give this game a 9. So what plot can follow after Mega Man X5? Well, that's when the next game comes in, Mega Man X6. Now I will say right off the bat that it still uses the engine of both X4 and X5. But what of the overall variety of this game? Well, just stay tuned for the review to find out. Anyway, thank you all for watching this review. I hope you like what I had to say about it. So up next in the marathon is Mega Man X6. Until then, this has been Musashi X. I bid you all farewell. Take care, and stay tuned.